Welcome to Criminal Injustice, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on America's broken legal system. I'm your host, Casey Krizman, a criminal defense attorney who fights in the trenches to dismantle the criminal justice system. In this podcast, I introduce you to the activists, advocates, and experts who are working to expose systemic oppression and create real change. The fight against criminal injustice starts now. Welcome back to Criminal Injustice. I'm Casey Krizman. Today I sat down with Sean Olson, a Denver-based personal injury attorney and a very close friend of mine. We spent time talking about how personal injury attorneys are the conduit to the justice system that folks who are injured need. Sean fields the normal criticisms that we all hear about personal injury attorneys and does his best to flip the script and show that it's actually the insurance companies who are committing the injustice. And finally, he shares with us some gut-wrenching war stories that provide stark relief into what the insurance companies do to deny and delay justice, even when it's legitimate. Let me welcome Sean to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you again.
It's great to see you. I'd like to start, frankly, at the beginning. Let's pretend our listeners don't know anything about what you do. Can you give us just the elevator pitch? What is a personal injury attorney?
Personal injury lawyer is a lawyer who deals in personal injury work. That's a pretty broad stroke. That can do, that's everything from auto accidents to slip and falls to medical malpractice cases, mass torts, things of that nature. So that saying you're a personal injury lawyer doesn't necessarily say exactly what it is that you do.
Okay.
I know a lot of lawyers try to do all of those things. We don't necessarily. I don't personally. I do a lot of medical malpractice work, and some more catastrophic injury, truck crash stuff, oil field accidents, things of that nature.
Okay. And so in terms of this vast continuum of personal injury type cases, do they have common threads or are they specific to their niche?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of common threads. I mean, obviously, someone's injured as a result of someone else's negligence. And I think the common thread that you see in most cases, maybe maybe some auto accidents and things like that, it's usually a system failure of some kind that has occurred along the way. In other words, someone stopped following the rules because it saved money for somebody somewhere. And, and when you start doing that, you cut corners, safety goes out the door, and inevitably someone gets hurt.
Right. So I'm hurt. I call your office and I say I need help. How are you going to help me?
Well, we do a number of things, to help. The first thing we do, and the first thing I tell any potential client that comes in the door is, we're going to take the burden of communicating with an insurance company, with an at-fault party or something like that off your plate.
And that's huge.
I think it's a significant thing, right? Because insurance companies, despite, the you're in good hands with Allstate and ads like that, you're not.
Right. Unless you need them, or unless you don't need them, right?
Correct.
If you
don't need them.
Great hands.
Right. Yeah. If they're just collecting your premiums, you're in good shape.
Right.
But when you do need them, you're not. And it's talking to insurance adjusters, talking to insurance companies is usually a trap of some kind. And for the folks who have never done it and have no experience doing it, they have no idea what to look out for.
Right.
And so it's a dangerous thing. And so for a lawyer to be able to take that off their plate and deal with that part of it while they go heal, get the medical care they need, it's a big first step.
Okay. And in terms of, let's kind of just zoom across the spectrum. Broadly speaking, what are you going to do for that client over the course of a case life cycle?
Well, really, that depends.
Okay.
There's a lot of different things that can be done. Obviously, like I said, the first thing is taking all the communication off their plate. The second thing to do is make sure they get the medical care they need. Because again, that's another system that people are suddenly thrust into that they don't always know how to navigate. And so we can help with that because, we've been through that row 1,000 times now. And so we can help people understand what everything means, understand what options they might have, to get the care they need to heal up, and things like that. And sometimes that's simply a matter of pointing them in the direction of their primary care physician. Sometimes people don't have insurance, or their insurance won't cover things that some doctor says they need, and then it's up to us to help them find other resources to pay for medical
Gotcha.
care and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then after that, it's working up a case, figuring out who's responsible, who's at
Right.
fault, and hopefully resolving their case quickly and early on, without the burden of litigation.
Right.
But if we can't, then filing a lawsuit and doing lawyer stuff in that respect.
And that's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to come in and really take the load off of them, and as you
I
said,
think
be
so.
able to heal. I want to step back and ask you, how did you get into this space? I mean, and even before we get there, who are you? Where are you from? How did you get into law?
Wow, that's a long history. So obviously, my name is Sean Olson. I've been a lawyer now since the early 2000s. 2006 is when I graduated law school.
Okay.
It was a second career for me. So I was in the TV business before that, production, writing, videography, all kinds of things.
Oh,
And
interesting.
dropped out, went to law school.
Okay.
And so I represented cops for about 10 years after law school, and
Okay.
then got invited to be part of a personal injury case, which I had never done. And they needed help taking a case to trial. And so I did. I jumped at the opportunity because it
Yeah.
sounded interesting, and it was. And the stakes were high. It was a big case, in terms of personal injury work.
Right.
And the outcome of that case, it was a young woman, about 22 years old, and the outcome of that case was going to determine whether she got to stay at home and live at home with her parents for the rest of her life, or get institutionalized in a state hospital and have to live
Wow.
there for the rest of her life. So it was huge, and the case, we were successful ultimately and had a great result. And this young woman had life-changing results as a result of what we did. And I thought after that, this is what I need to do.
Felt a little more rewarding than representing cops.
It did. Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Specifically, with regard to that, so the insurance companies didn't want to let her stay at home or give enough money to let her stay at home?
It was purely finances. Her parents didn't have the money to pay for
Sure.
at-home care. But the state, if she wanted to go to a state hospital,
Right.
she would have had that care. She required care around the clock, 24-hour
Yeah.
care. And her parents were in shifts. They did 12-hour shifts. So mom would go from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Dad would sleep all day, get up at 7:30 and start his shift at 8 p.m.
Wow.
and work until 8 a.m. And, no matter how much you love your daughter, that's only
You're
a
not
human body is only built to do that for so long.
indeed, or
And
not at all.
right,
And we just get through it as long as
right.
possible.
And that's what they did,
Let me ask you what I'm getting at here is we pay insurance for a reason,
Right.
right? So that we can be covered when things happen.
Sure.
And so that, God forbid, something happens to our children, they're going to be taken care of. And my question is, how close did the insurance companies in this case get to saying, yeah, we understand your loss and we want to be able to you to be able to take care of her with the help at home rather than sending her to a state? Did they even want to
You-
get close to what was necessary?
No, it wasn't. I mean, we took that case all the way through a trial,
Right.
and we were waiting for a jury to come back with a verdict before they finally came to the table and said, "Hey, let's try to do something for her."
While waiting for the verdict.
Correct. Right. So it was, and from the time of her accident to the time when they did that, I think almost 10 years had passed.
Oh
So
my
it was a long
goodness.
time, almost a decade of resistance before they did the right thing.
And after an entire trial where your clients risked it all.
Correct. Right.
Out of curiosity, did you get the verdict or was there a settlement at the end?
We got it resolved about 15 minutes before a jury was going to come back.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Did you find out where they were going to be?
never did.
One of those great mysteries. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
I'm happy to let it remain that.
So I'm glad we didn't get all. Yeah, indeed. Right. That's just a fun one to think about,
Yeah.
and you don't the Schrodinger's verdict, I suppose.
That's exactly right.
I'm glad we didn't, get through the nitty gritty of why do you love the law? Because, it's clear that you do, but yeah, I do think it's impactful that this case, after you'd been an attorney for so long, had such an impact on you.
It really did. Yeah. I mean, it changed me. It changed the way I looked at the law and the way the law can help people.
Mm,
Um, and it's just, I realized in that moment, I mean, it was a long moment, but it was in that moment that this is what I want to do.
right.
This is how I want to help.
Well, I want to get real for a moment here because when I think about the law, I do not have any good feelings about it. I spend the day fighting about how the law tramples my clients.
Oh,
Most of the time, the law is not on our side, and we don't have an arm to negotiate with while we're getting stomped on. So, I'd like to hear your perspective, right? Give me more of the good stuff from the law because I certainly don't consume enough of it.
huh. Yeah, I guess I feel differently about it most of the time.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, there are things that don't help us. There are legislatures that get bought out by the insurance industry or other
Mm,
special interests,
right,
and as a result, do things that don't help citizens that they represent.
right.
Uh, but I think, for the most part, when it comes to personal injury and tort law, as we call it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a long, long history of what it is. And it's a fairly simple thing, right? I mean, it's negligence, breach,
Yeah.
duty, and causation.
Who's responsible for what? And
Who's
how do we
responsible
make it
for it?
better?
Right. Pay for it, make it better. Everyone
Right.
gets to move on. It's different than criminal law. We're not sending anybody to jail. No one's ever going to jail based on the work that I do, and so it's different in that respect. And it's not as statutorily based as I think criminal law is. There's a
More
lot of common law, a lot of case law, things like that.
arguments in equity. This is what's right in this scenario.
Yeah,
And as well, I don't know if we all know, but I know, you're in pain. You'd rather be out of pain than have money. So it's certainly not
100
sufficient.
guaranteed that is the case. Yeah.
And heaven forbid I ever have, like a life altering injury or something that, makes it so that I'm permanently disabled. But I mean, just being in tooth pain is bad enough, right?
Yeah, and and that's the thing, right? I mean, we often hear these cases, oh, that person got,
Yeah.
$100,000 for a headache that they had, but most of the time that's not a person who had a headache for a day.
Right.
That's a person who wakes up every day and has that same headache over and over and over again. And
And has
and
to
it
find a way to provide for their
right.
family and all
Yeah, like world's not going to stop for their headache,
that.
right? I mean, the world keeps going, and but they have to find a way. And so we find, oftentimes verdict settlements, things like that. They're a way to find a way to money stands in the place
Hmm.
of what they have lost, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It's the best we can do,
It's the
right?
best we can do.
So you touched on tort law, and I grew up politics in the late '90s, early 2000s. It was all about tort reform, and the trial attorneys
Right.
are making our insurance premiums too high, and the McDonald's coffee case, and we could even touch on that.
Sure. Happy to talk
But
about
yeah,
that one.
well, let's do that one real quick, and then we'll jump on the legal stuff.
All right.
Tell us about what happened with the McDonald's coffee. I mean, we
Well,
all know that she got a ton of money because she got burned.
yeah, I think she got something like $1 million ultimately. Maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was a couple million. Um, that was the classic case of a corporation putting money over people,
Hmm.
profits before people. She had gone to this McDonald's and they had given her a cup of coffee through the drive-through, and it spilled on her as they were handing it to her.
Right.
And she had some pretty significant burns in her groin,
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. She was hurt
Very badly.
very badly.
Yes.
And all she wanted was her medical bills paid for. She simply asked
Hmm.
McDonald's to pay for her medical bills, which I think at the time were like $3,000 or $4,000.
Really?
And McDonald's said, no, we're not going to do that. It's not our fault.
Wow.
And so she found a lawyer, and the lawyer sued on her behalf. And what they learned is that,
And this is wild.
yeah,
What you're about to tell me is wild.
all right. So, yeah, you already
No,
know.
yeah.
Yeah. So they learned that McDonald's knew their coffee was way too hot. And they did a financial calculation and determined that it would be cheaper to pay out claims on that hot coffee rather than fix the dang hot coffee.
Do you
And
know why it was too hot? Why they kept it so hot?
I don't.
At that temperatures, coffee becomes more aromatic and more pleasing to the nose.
Ah, I did
You
not know
walk into
that.
McDonald's, it's 180 degrees, it smells better.
Huh.
You want to buy the coffee, and so they decided that coffee sales were going to increase more by keeping the coffee hot
Yeah.
to cover those claims.
Yeah. So there
Isn't
you
it
go.
crazy?
It is. I mean, it's crazy, but it doesn't surprise me in least.
Well, I mean, so you experience that regularly, or things like that
Things
regularly?
like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it happens all the time.
So let's dive in.
Okay.
Let's rip the band-aid off halfway through. Trial attorneys are the enemy, right? We're
Right.
the ones that are making everything more expensive and making the people who don't deserve anything just have a headache getting these windfalls. Is that accurate?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, the
Yeah.
insurance industry has a different opinion on that than I do.
Okay. Give us yours.
All we're a conduit for folks finding justice. You know,
Hmm.
even in the event of a trial, right? The McDonald's case, for example, that wasn't some lawyer saying, hey, this is what this case is worth. Now we need, $3 million.
Right.
They took that to a jury, right? A panel of common sense folks from the neighborhood. And they said, hey, here's the facts. Here's what we think. What do you think?
Hmm.
And the jury said, we think that's $3 million.
Wow.
So it's not, we're the middleman, right? We're
Yeah.
just there to communicate the message and ask, what's this worth? And we've got this great system, this jury system that gets to determine that.
Right.
And it's one of the great equalizers in our society, and there aren't many in our society these days, that bridge that
Yeah.
gap between the ultra wealthy, ultra
The have,
powerful,
yeah.
and the have-nots. And the jury system is that thing. I mean, it's
Well, I think I've pegged it now is that for you it's access to the courts.
absolutely,
So
yeah,
it's access to justice. That's why there's that positive tinge. Whereas for me, the courts are retributive. But if I'm going to take it, because I need to learn too and be better, right? The truth is, I don't have to take it just at that face level. Trials are our opportunity to get past what I believe to be an unjust system
right,
and get it in front of those folks.
right,
So I'm going to change my prism just a little bit.
love
Thank
it,
you for that.
yeah.
Um, so when we're talking about, holding these insurance companies to task, what are we doing wrong with the messaging? Why are we losing the battle in public opinion?
Because you don't have enough money. Uh, I mean, that's the simple answer to
Yeah.
that, right? I mean, the insurance lobby is huge. They bring in State Farm and Allstate and all the other guys. I mean, they profit literally to the tune of billions of dollars a year.
Hmm.
And with a very small portion of that money, they pay for lobbyists, they pay for PR campaigns, and they do all manner of things to get their message out, to make sure everybody understands their perspective on things, which is trial lawyers are bad. Lawsuits are costing us too much money and bringing up the cost of goods and medical care and everything else under the sun. There is no future victims lobby,
Right.
right? I mean, sitting here, knock on wood, you and I are never going to be a personal injury
I'm
victim,
actually
right?
knock on wood for
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
and we should, right? But there's no lobby on our behalf,
Right.
to make sure that our message gets heard before we get hurt.
Well, that's because we think the insurance companies are going to take care of us. We're in good hands.
Partly, yeah, but no one believes that they're going to be the victim of
Sure,
a
that
wrongful
too.
death
Right.
or a horrific accident or anything like that. That's something that happens to other people.
Well, and I don't want to get too ethereal, but honestly, that's until you and I and everybody else realizes that our ride could be over, not just tomorrow, but tonight at
Yep.
any point in time. You're not living on the right time frame or with the right time frame.
Right.
We've got to be grateful. We've got to seize every day and enjoy what we have because we could lose it.
Absolutely.
While everyone else is screaming that we're driving insurance premiums up and that we're getting all these ill-gotten gains and taking too much of the pie anyway, we're also out there advertising pretty loud.
Yep.
How does someone find the right personal injury attorney you're looking for?
Well, you're right. We oftentimes don't do ourselves any favors with the marketing that some firms do. It brings a worse name to what some already consider a bad name. But they do it because it works,
Mhm.
and that there's a certain slice of clientele that they get as a result of those kinds of things. But I tell everyone there's a few things to keep in mind if you're ever out there looking for a lawyer, personal injury lawyer. The very first is to find someone who knows how to work a case like yours.
Okay.
Because a medical malpractice case is not like a car accident case, is not
Right.
like an airline case, is not a drug case, right? So you got to find someone who knows what they're doing, and if they don't know what they're doing, at least have someone that nearby who does,
Right.
that they can call on or associate with or something like that.
Okay.
Secondly, find someone you're going to get along with.
That's so important.
It's a 1,000 times important because, as I tell everyone, these are marathons, not sprints. And if you don't like your lawyer as a person, as a human being,
Right.
it's going to make that marathon awfully dang hard
Yeah.
and miserable, quite frankly.
You're going to have a hard time trusting them too. While you wait.
Absolutely.
While you wait.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then once you find someone you like, make sure you trust them as well. And make sure they've got the results that to back up what they're telling you. And finally, make sure they've got the resources as well.
Okay.
Because, the reality of it is personal injury cases can get expensive the more complicated they are. And, you want to make sure that your lawyer is making good decisions on your behalf, not their own. So those are the things those are the things I tell everyone to look at.
You don't want an attorney who's scared to financially front a trial case or something like that. And results matter, don't they?
They do matter, which is, you've got a copy of my book, do you? It's right here.
Right there. Successful author, Sean Olson, Results Matter, and Indeed They Do. It's a good book, by the way. Good read.
Thanks.
So let me get back to that then, in terms of we're losing the PR campaign and why. That all makes perfect sense. And certainly it seems David and Goliath, right?
It's absolutely David and Goliath.
So Joe Smith is watching. He sees the commercial that says, we're bad. PI attorneys are bad, and it's just unfair. But now I've put you right at his kitchen table. You get to give the rejoinder to that. So everything else is equal. Now we get to say, no, we're not the bad guys. They are. How do you say that?
Well, that's a great question. How do we say that? I think trial lawyers, for the most part, are injured folks' path to justice. It's a complex system that we have created. No matter what kind of case you have, it's complex. Everything, obviously a car accident is going to be an easier case to prove than complex medical malpractice case, but it's all complicated. And the people who are immersed in it are the ones who know it. The insurance adjusters, the defense lawyers, the trial lawyers. We know how it works, but most people don't. They don't have a clue, and God forbid you walk into that system thinking the system's going to look out for you, because it's not.
Right.
And so we're the path, we're the vehicle for you to find justice along the way.
But you take so much of the money at the end anyway.
Yeah, we get paid. There's no doubt about that. And that's a question we get all the time.
Right.
How do you justify that? And we get paid based on the value of our services. And we provide, through contingency fees, which is what everyone complains about, getting a percentage of what we're able to collect. That system allows us to provide the same level of legal services to folks who have no money that the insurance companies are getting on their side with endless amounts of money. And so it's a mechanism by which you even those scales out.
Right, because you're not just fronting your legal fees, right? A lot of times you're fronting expert costs and things.
We're fronting everything, right? When a client comes to us, they're paying nothing out of pocket.
Right.
All the risk goes to us. So if we get to the end of the day and we can't resolve a case in their favor, we can't get them money, we don't get paid anything. And on top of that, for whatever money we've paid along the way, in terms of expert fees, investigation fees, costs, any costs that come in, we're going to eat all of that as well. And and sometimes that's not a small sum of money.
Right.
We get into cases for hundreds of thousands of dollars at times, and and if the system wasn't set up to allow for that, those folks wouldn't have any opportunity to do that on their own.
Right. Yeah. And, and also if they would just pay up front the right way, we wouldn't have to take them to trial and get 3 million for a cup of coffee.
There would also be that.
Well, and I think in order to help control the narrative, let's get into some facts about why these insurance companies are bad. They don't use any facts, but they've got the megaphone. Let's
Right.
use facts and tell the truth here. So, why are the insurance companies bad? How are they getting in the way of justice?
Well, they get in the way of justice. I mean, again, because they're so big, and they have unlimited amounts of money to
Hmm.
do whatever they want to do. The two primary things they do to deny folks justice is first deny claims,
Okay.
legitimate claims that they should be paying out. And when they realize they can't deny it any longer, then they delay. And the saying, justice delayed is justice denied.
Right. Right.
It's at work every single day in the world that I work in. It's their game plan. That's what they do.
How can they get away with just denying legitimate claims? Isn't their job to pay legitimate claims?
It is their job in theory, but everyone's got to keep in mind they make money by hanging on to their money.
Right.
That's their game plan, right? I mean, they collect all of our premiums from all the folks who pay them, and they
Right.
take that money and they invest it, and they make more money on top of the money.
Right.
And if they start paying that money out in a regular fashion, then they're not making as much money. So
Yeah. And I
that's their
guess
incentive.
I know I sound naive, but my gosh, your job is to pay out claims when shit happens,
Right.
and you're not doing it. Okay. And then you said that they delay. How do they do that?
Well, then it's, if you're in the pre-litigation phase, so prior to a lawsuit being
Mhm.
filed, it's, 45 days after, we send in a notice, they call back and say, "Hey, we got your letter. We need X, Y, and Z still. You didn't provide us with this." And they're
Okay.
like, "Okay." So then it takes a little while to get that, and we send that in, and they're like, "Hey, we never got this other document,
Right.
the document that we sent them 3 months ago."
Right.
And they say, "Sorry, we just can't find it. And so could you send that back again?" And there's all kinds of games like that that are
Wow.
played where things are just drawn out over
Do you
and
just
over and over again.
expect it now in cases?
Yeah, it does. Well, I don't expect it, but it doesn't surprise me when it happens.
Okay. Okay. How do you tell your hurt clients who are sitting there in pain, running up tabs, hoping that they're going to get, at least their bills covered,
Right.
let alone any type of pain and suffering? Uh, what do you tell them about timelines?
I tell them I can't promise anything.
Mm.
The only thing I can promise them is that we're going to work as hard on it as fast as we can. But I can never guarantee what the other side's going to do.
Can you give us a war story that kind of exemplifies the deny delay tactics that the insurance companies use?
Yeah, there's one that we're actually in the middle of right now
Oh.
that's finally headed to a trial, but it's one where a little girl died as a result of medical malpractice, and it was an entire unit of a hospital that really contributed. It was a system breakdown, safety failures all over the place, and this little girl was allowed to go home and die alone on her family couch, and we've been working on that case for about almost 5 years now. And it was the typical game plan, delay until they couldn't delay any longer, and then we filed a lawsuit. They filed an appeal in the middle of the lawsuit, went all the way up to the Supreme Court. A week before we were supposed to argue to the Supreme Court, they dismissed the appeal and sent it back down. They voluntarily dismissed their own appeal,
Oh, there. Oh.
and so they bought themselves over a year just doing that.
While her parents are grieving.
While our parents are grieving and just wanting to put this behind them, but they're unwilling to do so because no one has yet done anything to make sure this doesn't happen again. And so they're in the fight, but yeah, but their fight has been dragged out for a long time.
And this is why we fight.
Absolutely.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's a tragic case.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to provide that access to the courts that that family needs. That's
And
so important.
and if it wasn't me, if it wasn't for another lawyer, they wouldn't have that access. They don't have the sophistication, they don't have the resources. There would be no happy ending, no good ending that comes out of this.
I mean,
if it
the
wasn't for
average
that.
job, I mean, negotiating your medical bills after they come in the mail is bad enough. Trying to get justice for A dead daughter? Oh my God.
It's
No,
hard.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. It's why we do what we do.
Again, just give us your practice areas generally. So you specifically medical malpractice, kind of the catastrophic stuff.
Yeah, medical malpractice. I do some truck crashes. We do some oil field things.
Okay.
Things like that.
And then if someone were to get in a car accident, would your firm take that case?
The firm would still take the case.
Okay.
We've got other lawyers who are specialists in that particular field. So we've always got someone who can take care of it.
Okay, so your firm, it's safe to say, handles the entire spectrum of personal injury, or at least
Pretty much.
the known spectrum.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that we won't take on.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure that we have the information on how to contact Sean Olson's law firm. It's the Olson Injury Law.
It's olsonlawfirm.com or protectingthewest.com.
Protecting the West. And you're in Wyoming as well.
We're in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico.
All right. So if you're in the Mountain West and somebody hurts you and the insurance companies are trying to screw you over, Sean's your guy. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Casey. Pleasure.